There was a red strap on the floor. I noticed it while I was searching for my other sock. It wasn't mine, obviously, and it didn't belong in our laundry basket. It was delicate, silky, slightly twisted, and unmistakably new. The kind of thing she wouldn't wear for bed, not at home, not for me. The bathroom door was still warm when I leaned against it. Steam clung to the mirror, but even through the blur, I could see it, a smudge of lipstick far darker than what she usually wore. The trash can had tissue paper in it, black, from a box I hadn't seen before. She didn't say goodbye when she left that night. Just grabbed a clutch that wasn't hers 2 weeks ago, clicked out the door in heels that hadn't seen daylight in over a year, and told me, "Don't wait up. We might go out after dinner." Dinner? For business. She said it like it was nothing. But here's the part that won't leave me. Before she closed the door, I asked, "Who's driving?" She paused. "Jared," she said, not even blinking. "He's picking the team up." Jared. The regional guy who always shook my hand without looking me in the eye. Jared, who once told her in front of me, "If you were on my team, I'd triple your numbers." I thought he was just a creep. Now I think he was a warm-up act. I didn't sleep. Of course not. I don't even remember what I did, honestly. I just wandered from room to room like a ghost wearing my own skin. Around midnight, I sat down in her spot on the couch. The cushion still had the faintest outline of her weight. It hadn't gone cold yet. She didn't text. She didn't call. At 2:08 a.m., I heard the front door unlock. Not open, just unlock. But she didn't come in. Not right away. I stayed quiet. Waited. Counted the seconds. Then I saw her silhouette through the frosted glass. She was standing still. No movement. 10 seconds. 20. A full minute. And then a knock. She knocked. On her own door. When I opened it, I saw her, bare feet, dress wrinkled, a tear cutting through her mascara. She looked like she'd rehearsed 1,000 things to say but forgot every single one the second our eyes met. And I still haven't said a word. But I saw the strap again, that red one, curled near the base of the stairs. It wasn't an accident. It was a breadcrumb. And I was meant to follow it. She stepped into the house like she didn't know whether she was allowed to be there anymore. She didn't say a word. Just hovered near the threshold, clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her from unraveling. Her dress, that expensive slate gray thing with the low back, was slightly torn at the hem. Her hands were trembling, and her makeup, let's just say it was more morning after than corporate dinner. I didn't ask anything. Not at first. I walked into the kitchen and poured coffee, even though neither of us was going to drink it. It was just something to do with my hands, because if I didn't, I might have picked up that strap from the floor and thrown it at her feet. She finally broke the silence. "I didn't mean for it to go like that. Nothing happened. I can explain. Just, I didn't mean for it to go like that." That line hit harder than anything. It meant there was that. There was a moment, or a series of them, that she couldn't walk back from. What was it supposed to be, Clarice? I asked, and my voice cracked. I hate that it cracked. I wanted to be calm, composed. But instead, I sounded like a boy watching his favorite toy break in half. She sat down slowly at the edge of the couch, like it might reject her. It was supposed to be just dinner. Jared said the client would be there, just drinks, nothing more. "So you wore that," I said, pointing toward the corner where her heels lay like discarded weapons. "And the red lace? You picked that out for drinks." Her mouth opened, but she had nothing. Just blinking, swallowing, looking for a ledge to cling to in a flood of guilt. I walked past her, opened the drawer where we keep our receipts and house keys. She watched me, eyes narrowing in confusion. I pulled out her wallet. Empty. Every card slot was blank. The emergency cash gone. Even the photo of us from our first trip to Maine had been removed. That hurt in a way I hadn't expected. Not just that she took it all out, but that she planned ahead to do it. That wasn't spur of the moment. That wasn't too many drinks. That was logistics. I had to. I didn't want to risk dropping it, she stammered. The bag was small, Jared told me. Jared again, I muttered. I sat across from her and placed the wallet on the table between us like it was evidence in a trial. You took out your ID, the credit cards, the photo. You left everything that made you at home. Why? She looked at me, and for a second I saw it, the panic behind her eyes. Not regret. Panic. Like she realized she hadn't cleaned up her tracks as perfectly as she thought. I wasn't going to do anything, she whispered. I was just curious. It was supposed to be harmless. That word hit me in the chest. Harmless. I sat here last night, I said, and watched the security app alert me when the garage door opened. You waited 15 minutes outside. Then you knocked. You never knock. So tell me, Clarice, what happened between 2:01 and 2:16? Her face went pale, and then came the tears again. But I didn't comfort her this time. I didn't even hand her a tissue. I just waited, because whatever she was about to say next would either be the truth or the final nail. And what I found in the guest bathroom later that day, behind the sink, under the towel rack, proved she was only halfway to honesty. I didn't go looking for more. I swear I didn't. I just wanted to brush my teeth. My mouth had that bitter, metallic taste that stress leaves behind, and I thought maybe mint and cold water could make me feel less like I was rotting from the inside out. But when I reached for a fresh towel, I saw it. Or rather, I saw just the edge of it. A tiny corner, slightly curled, peeking out from behind the rack where we usually hang hand towels. It was an envelope, not sealed, not addressed, just tucked away like it had been hidden in a rush, or like someone had meant to come back for it later. I pulled it out carefully, already feeling that tight pull in my chest that had become so familiar in the last 24 hours. Inside were two things. The first, a printout of a hotel reservation. One night, room 503, booked under a name I didn't recognize. Not hers, not Jared's, some generic male alias. But the email confirmation had her personal Gmail address, the same one she used to send me grocery lists. The second thing was a note, handwritten, on the kind of small stationery card that hotels leave on pillows. 5 words. Thanks for last night. Again. No name. No signature. Just that. A quiet explosion. I remember staring at the handwriting for so long, my vision blurred. I must have read that card 50 times. Each time hoping the letters would rearrange themselves. Hoping there was a punchline I was missing. But no. Just ink on paper and silence in my lungs. When I walked back into the living room, she was gone. Not out the door, just out of sight. I heard soft movement upstairs. Closet doors. Drawers. Her nervous footsteps pacing across the bedroom floorboards. I didn't go up. I couldn't. I sat on the bottom step, card in one hand, printout in the other, and wondered how long this had been going on. That envelope wasn't from last night. The dates didn't match. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a pattern. Eventually, I heard her come down. Her voice was quiet. Are you going to say anything? I handed her the card. She didn't look surprised. She didn't even flinch. That told me everything. I wanted to stop, she said, voice flat, almost robotic. But I didn't know how to come back to us without explaining what I'd become. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so tragically theatrical. What she'd become. She made it sound like she had transformed into a stranger by accident. Like a werewolf under a full moon. I didn't know this version of you even existed, I said. But apparently he's been sleeping in room 503 on and off for God knows how long. She sat down across from me, folded her hands like we were in couples therapy. I think she wanted to confess, to spill it all, and cry into her own redemption arc. But I wasn't ready to give her that. You planned this, I told her. You booked a room under a fake name. You brought hotel stationery home. You hid that envelope like it was an IOU. You didn't stumble into this, Clarice. You built it. She looked down. Her thumb was digging into the palm of her hand. She always did that when she was anxious. Then she whispered something I'll never forget. He made me feel like someone again. Not loved. Not respected. Not even safe. Just someone. And with that, she confirmed it wasn't about sex. Or Jared. Or business dinners. It was about something much emptier. Something scarier. I stood up. Walked to the hallway. Stared at our wedding photo. The one where I looked so damn sure of her. Of us. Behind me, she said, it's not what I wanted. But it happened. And now I don't know what you want me to do. I didn't answer. Not yet. Because I didn't know either. But that night, I made a quiet decision. A plan that would take a few days to come together. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to give her exactly what she gave me. Something unforgettable. She went upstairs again that evening, said she needed space, a shower, maybe sleep. I didn't ask where she'd be sleeping. I didn't care. Not in that moment. I was done listening to carefully curated versions of the truth. I needed something real, raw, unedited, undeniable. Her phone was on the charger in the kitchen. That fact alone nearly broke me. She always brought it with her, even to brush her teeth. Even when we watched a movie, it would buzz face down next to her like a ticking bomb only she could disarm. But now it was downstairs. Charging. left alone with me. Like bait. Or a test. I stood there for what felt like an hour just staring at it. I didn't want to be that guy. The one who snoops. The one who digs. But I was already past that point. I was the guy who found a hotel note behind a towel rack. I was the guy whose wife came home in lingerie meant for another man. I had nothing left to protect, except maybe the truth. It was unlocked. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she wanted me to look. Or maybe she knew I would and wanted to control what I found. But either way, I picked it up. First thing I checked was her email. Nothing unusual. Except the trash folder. A string of deleted confirmations, same hotel, different dates. Every 3 or 4 weeks. Most with generic booking names. Some marked, paid in cash. Then I went to her gallery. She'd been smart. Nothing saved. No obvious folder. But under recently deleted, there were 12 images waiting to be permanently wiped in 3 days. I wish I could forget what I saw. One was a mirror selfie. That same slate gray dress. But the angle told a different story. She wasn't in the bathroom. She was in a hotel suite. Hair tousled, not polished. Lips parted, slightly smeared lipstick. Someone else's hands, unmistakably masculine, visible at her hips, mid-motion, caught just on the edge of the frame. She was smiling. A real, glowing, free kind of smile. The kind I hadn't seen in years. The next was worse. Not because of what was visible, but because of the caption. A blurry shot of a wine glass on a table and a message typed beneath, "You always remember what I like." Unlike him. I stopped breathing. Unlike him. Me. I was the him. The footnote in her life. The static part. The unremarkable presence. There was also a voice memo. Just 23 seconds long. I played it once. Just once. Her voice. Breathless, laughing. Saying his name, and not Jared. Someone else. Someone I hadn't even considered yet. And then she said, "We've got till 10 tomorrow. He thinks I'm staying at Lily's again." I put the phone down, my hands ice cold and sticky with sweat. It wasn't just betrayal. It was routine. A system. A parallel life. That night, I slept in the guest room, but I didn't close my eyes. I couldn't. I kept replaying the voice memo, her laughter looping through my head like a soundtrack to a life I wasn't invited into. I thought I knew pain. I thought I'd hit bottom when I saw her crying at the door that morning. But no, this was lower, deeper, sharper. At 3:40 a.m., I made a list. Not of questions. Not of things I wanted her to explain. I made a list of what she'd taken from me. Time, trust, dignity, intimacy. And now? My memory of who she used to be. She'd burned it all. Smiling in someone else's arms, telling him I didn't know what she liked. Well, maybe I didn't. But she was about to find out what I was capable of when I'd finally had enough. What I did next, I didn't expect it to unfold the way it did. The next morning was quiet in the way that only guilt can make a house feel. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like an apology. Every coffee mug I touched reminded me of mornings when she used to hum while she poured the cream. Now it was just silence and the occasional sound of her pacing upstairs, probably wondering if I'd say something, or worse, if I wouldn't. I didn't plan to confront her yet. Not because I was scared of her reaction, but because I knew, truly knew, that anything she said now would be rehearsed, filtered, or laced with some warped version of the truth. She wasn't ready to be honest, but I was done waiting for permission to react. So I packed a bag. Not to leave. I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. I packed to create space, to act. A mental buffer. I grabbed the keys to our second car, the one she rarely used, and drove across town to a coffee shop she didn't know I remembered. 2 years ago, she met an old college friend here. She talked about how refreshing it was to catch up, how inspired she felt afterward. What she didn't know was that I'd been there the same day. Coincidentally, I'd seen her sitting with a man she never introduced me to, laughing, touching his arm, leaning in too closely. At the time, I told myself I was being paranoid, that I was insecure, that she deserved to have moments that didn't revolve around me. Now, I was done offering her those excuses. I ordered a coffee and sat in the far corner where no one could see my screen. Then I pulled out the USB I had copied her phone data to the night before, the messages, photos, even the memo, and opened the files one by one. I didn't skip. I didn't skim. I made myself read every line, absorb every word like a man preparing for battle. Most of it was harmless sounding on the surface. "You're my escape. He's so predictable. Can't wait to be wrapped up in you again." But the timestamps told the real story. These weren't just casual moments. These were exchanges during our anniversary trip. On Christmas Eve, right after our nephew's birthday party. Her texts to him were laced with words like alive, wild, free. Mine? My messages were the usual. Need anything from the store? Want me to pick up dinner? I miss you. It wasn't even a contest. She had been living in two entirely different stories, and I was the footnote she never read aloud. But the real blow came when I found a file titled, just in case. It was a draft email, addressed to me, never sent. It read like a confession mixed with a final verdict. In it, she admitted to seeing someone else for nearly a year, not Jared, not even the man from the voice memo, but another one. Someone she met through work during a retreat in Colorado. She said she wasn't proud, that things got complicated, and that she never stopped loving me, just not in the same way. That sentence sat there like poison. Not in the same way. How many ways are there to love someone you promised forever to? By the time I got home, the air felt different. Thicker. Heavier. She was in the kitchen, pretending to fold dish towels, eyes flickering to me and away like a child caught in a lie with a mouth full of stolen cookies. I said nothing. Just walked past her and into the den. She followed a few minutes later, tension building in every step. Are you okay? She asked, voice low. I looked up and said only, how many? She blinked. What? Don't pretend, I said, calmly. How many people have you shared that hotel room with? There was no shock on her face. Just a long, tired blink. Does it matter? I stood up, not in rage, but in something colder. It does now. She stepped back as if she finally realized I wasn't just some passive fool who'd sit around begging for answers. I think it scared her a little, not because I was angry, but because I wasn't. I walked to the entryway, picked up the envelope I had left on the table, the hotel printout, the photo, and a burned disk with all the files. I held it out to her. You can keep this, I said. You'll need it when the stories start to crumble and you forget which version you told. She didn't take it. So I dropped it on the floor. She flinched at the sound. Don't you think we should talk? She asked, finally. We're way past talking, I said. Now it's time you hear what I've been doing while you were busy feeling alive. Because the truth was, while she thought I was spiraling, I was already working on something she hadn't seen coming. That evening, I went about my usual routine like a man playing his final hand in a game he didn't ask to join. I microwaved leftovers, fed the cat, took out the trash. She watched me from the hallway like she couldn't decide whether I'd gone completely numb or was holding something too big to say out loud. She was right on both counts. But I wasn't numb. I was focused. Earlier that day, while she was upstairs fake folding clothes or whatever it was she did to look busy, I sent an email. Not to a friend. Not to a lawyer. I sent it to someone she never expected, her company's ethics board, with a quiet subject line that read, Internal Concern, Code of Conduct. No threats. No accusations. Just a compiled PDF of select messages, hotel receipts billed to a corporate card, and a timeline of her activity that lined up a little too neatly with meetings that apparently never happened. You see, when you've been quietly betrayed for over a year, you learn to stop reacting emotionally. You learn to start calculating. I didn't want her job. I didn't even want to ruin her life. I just wanted her world to stop spinning long enough for her to feel what stillness felt like, the kind of stillness I'd been drowning in for months. After I sent the email, I made one more decision. I called her father. We'd always had a good relationship. He used to call me the calm one, like that was my defining trait. I didn't tell him everything. Just said that Clarice and I were going through something, and that he might want to check in. There was a long silence on his end before he finally said, She's been different lately. Yeah, you don't say. Back in the living room, she finally found the courage to speak. What are you doing? She asked, watching me light a candle at the table we hadn't eaten at together in over 3 months. I'm preparing, I said. For what? For the fallout. She blinked at me like I was speaking in riddles. You're not making sense. No, I said, looking up at her calmly, you just finally stopped understanding me. That landed. I saw it. She folded her arms tightly across her chest, suddenly very aware of her own skin. I never wanted this to spiral, she whispered. You wanted freedom, I said. And you got it. I'm just giving you the view from the other side of the cage. Then I walked into our shared office and picked up the manila folder I'd left on her chair earlier. Inside were printed pages, clean, formatted, undeniable. My lawyer friend Mark helped me draft the document. It wasn't a divorce petition. Not yet. But it outlined my conditions for separation if things didn't change, financially, logistically, and emotionally. It was a quiet warning. A line in the sand. She followed me into the room and opened the folder. I watched her eyes track the words. Her fingers trembled just slightly at the bottom of the page that listed how much of our savings I had already moved into a new private account under my name. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, and her voice cracked again. Not from sadness, but from the panic of losing control. "I'm doing what I should have done the first time I noticed you dressing up for someone who wasn't me." Her mouth opened, maybe to argue, maybe to beg, but I held up a hand. "Don't speak. Just think. Really think. About how many lies you've told in this house. How many good mornings you've served over burnt eggs while texting someone else goodnight. About the smell of that perfume you only wear when I'm not invited." She started crying again. This time the kind of crying that comes from realizing you don't get to reset the board just because you regret the game. I didn't comfort her. I stood there, letting her feel the weight of what she'd turned us into. "You wanted me to act," I said. "Well, I finally did." And then, with a quiet finality, I turned off the lights in the office and walked out. The house behind me stayed dark for a long time. It started with a phone call at 8:14 a.m. I was already awake, sitting on the porch, drinking coffee that had long gone cold. She stumbled into the kitchen in her robe, eyes puffy, clutching her phone like a lifeline. I heard the tone of the voice on the other end. Low, clipped, formal. She kept nodding even though no one could see her, the color draining from her face with each passing second. When she hung up, she stood frozen. I didn't ask what they said. I already knew. Her job wasn't gone, not yet. But she was under internal review. She was asked not to attend upcoming meetings. They'd be conducting an audit of several expense claims tied to travel she listed under client relations. And they wanted a written statement regarding her conduct during those events. The kind of language that means, "We're building the case, and we're giving you just enough rope to either explain yourself or hang by your own signature." I didn't gloat. I didn't even look at her. I just stared out over the lawn, wondering how many times she'd left this house with clean clothes and dirty intentions. She walked past me a few minutes later, keys in hand, shoulders slumped. But she didn't drive off. She just sat in the driver's seat with the door open, head in her hands. I watched from the window as she dialed someone, then hung up, then tried again. Who was she calling? Him? Her boss? Someone to blame? Someone to cry to? I didn't care. At noon, I got a message from her sister. Something short and vague. "Hey, Clarice called me. She said things are weird at home. Is everything okay?" I didn't answer. By 2 p.m., she was back inside. But she didn't talk. She moved like a ghost through the house, opening drawers, starting tasks, and abandoning them halfway through. She burned a grilled cheese and scraped the blackened crust into the sink without eating a single bite. She sat on the couch, phone in her lap, typing and deleting, typing and deleting. I stayed upstairs, reading, pretending, letting the silence stretch. But I was listening. I heard her crying again that evening. Quiet, desperate sobs. The kind of crying you do when you know no one's coming to check on you. And I didn't. I let her feel what it was like to be alone under the same roof as someone who no longer bent to comfort her. At 7:26 p.m., I got the first real message from her. A text, even though I was in the next room. "Can we talk?" I didn't reply, but she came upstairs anyway. She stood at the bedroom door and looked at me like a stranger who had once lived here and was now hoping for a place to sit. "I didn't think it would ever get this bad," she said. "That's because you only ever imagined it from your side," I replied without looking up. She stepped in. Her voice was thinner this time, smaller. "I'm scared." I folded the corner of my page and set the book down. "Of what?" "That I've ruined everything," she whispered. "You have." She flinched. The truth hit harder when spoken plainly. "I didn't plan for it to be so serious," she said, sinking to sit on the edge of the bed like she belonged there. "It started as, God, I don't even know. Validation? Attention? You just what?" I asked, sharper now. "Needed someone to remind you that you're still desirable? Someone to notice the lingerie I haven't seen since our honeymoon? You needed a secret to make you feel alive." She couldn't answer. "I saw the pictures, Clarice. I heard the recordings. And you didn't sound guilty. You sounded free." That broke her. Her face crumpled, and for a second I saw the real her, the one I married, the one who used to stay up late with me just to laugh at dumb videos or talk about where we'd retire someday. But that version of her was buried now beneath too many lies and too many nights spent in someone else's bed. "I've been spiraling," she said, voice shaking. "I've been trying to remember how to be who I was with you. But it's like I don't know where that person went. She's not gone, I said, standing. You just stopped choosing her. She reached for my hand. And for the first time, I didn't offer it. I need time, she said. I need to fix this. I shook my head. No, you need to live in it. Because I was done cushioning her fall. Done sweeping the glass out of the way so she didn't cut herself on the pieces she broke. She wanted to feel alive. Now she could feel what it meant to rebuild something from rubble. The next morning, I expected her to be gone. For good this time. The silence in the house had that early weight to it, like the stillness before a storm or the hollow echo of a final goodbye. I walked downstairs slowly, half hoping I wouldn't find her things by the door, the suitcase she always kept in the back of the closet now sitting out in the open. But nothing had moved. No suitcase. No keys missing. No disappearing act. She was in the kitchen. Not pacing. Not fake busy. Just standing there with 2 mugs in front of her, mine on the left, hers on the right. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. I didn't sleep, she said without looking up. I stayed awake and went through everything. I read the text again. I read the draft I wrote you, the one you weren't meant to see. I listened to myself in that voice message and I hated who I was. I waited. Words are cheap in moments like that. They need to come with action or they dissolve on impact. She finally looked at me. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve that right now. But I need to tell you the truth, not pieces, not versions. The whole thing, if you'll let me. And after that, if you want me gone, I won't fight it. I studied her face for a long time. Not because I was unsure, but because for the first time in months, she wasn't hiding behind something. No fake confidence. No curated sorrow. Just raw honesty. And it didn't look polished. It looked terrifying. Talk, I said. We sat on the back porch. No raised voices. No accusations. Just the slow, painful reconstruction of a broken timeline. She told me everything. The retreat in Colorado. The first night that turned into more. The guilt that didn't come soon enough. The way she tried to balance 2 lives until neither made sense anymore. She didn't justify it. She didn't shift blame. She just owned it. I asked hard questions. She answered all of them. Even the ones that made her cry. Especially those. When it was over, I didn't stand up right away. I just stared at the ground, letting the truth settle like dust on burned wood. I'm going to counseling, she said quietly. I already found a place. I scheduled an appointment. Not for us, yet. For me. Because if I can't fix myself, I don't deserve a second chance. It wasn't some grand apology. It was a start. And maybe that's all I needed. Because for the first time, I saw her fighting for something instead of running from everything. So I nodded. Just once. No promises. No clean slate. Just a small opening. Then we'll see, I said. Over the next few weeks, she showed up. Every day. She put her phone face up on the table. She left the passwords unlocked. She brought receipts, not just literal ones, but emotional proof that she was working through her mess, not skipping steps. And slowly, quietly, something shifted. We started talking at dinner again. We laughed once or twice, awkward at first, then genuinely. She held my hand during a walk and didn't let go. She didn't rush it. She didn't pretend the damage was gone. She just kept showing up. One night, I found a note in my sock drawer. 5 words, scribbled in her handwriting. Thanks for staying. For real. It was a callback to the hotel note. But this time, it meant something entirely different. And it hit me then. Sometimes the person who shatters your heart is also the one willing to kneel in the glass and rebuild with bare hands. Not because they have to, but because they want to. We're still rebuilding. And it's not perfect. It's messy and hard and uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, it feels like both of us are finally in the same room. And neither of us is trying to leave.